so high, it needed clearance from NASA. It's John Doe Radio.
It's the John Doe Radio Show. How much higher can you get?
Well, what the president said during the campaign, you'll be surprised to know, will be consistent with what we'll be doing here in law enforcement.
And now talking about legalizing marijuana and taxing marijuana to solve budget problems.
Prohibition doesn't work. Maybe after 71 years, it's time for a new approach.
We should be able to give our kids the message we think is appropriate.
A rational, safer choice.
Great celebration of freedom.
Legalize the possession of marijuana.
John Doe Radio. Live.
How we do. Kangaroos. Travis fan. Bump it up, ladies and gentlemen. It's your Friday. Slap them wings. Come on. Just imagine John Travolta, 80s film. Dancing around. Yeah. Alright, now we have no more energy for the rest of the show. Welcome, thank you very much for hanging out with us here on the John Doe Radio Show. That's not the button, that's the button, that's the button. There we go. Wait a second here. Such a weird balance of audio sometimes. Whew. I'm out of breath now. We gotta get caught up with news. Why does it seem so low? Hold on. There, that's better for me. It's all in the hips. It's all in the hips. So, first off, we have to, shouldn't do that at the beginning until we get back into better shape. Oh my goodness. I could barely lift this glass of water. So first off, hold on, let me flip this over here. There, that's less red. So first off the bat, we have to talk about Virginia and the absolute fucked up bullshit that Virginia. Yeah, that's the second I say Virginia, Logistics comes flying in with his name in the chat, like, oh yeah, is John Doe gonna talk about Virginia today? Is he gonna eat his words today? Yeah. Here's the thing. I've spent more time in the past 3 days on Virginia. Now, granted, I haven't spent a whole lot of time on any state the past few years, but I'm telling you right now, even when I did spend time on states and learning the ins and outs, I'm still fucking confused on how you operate things there. So I feel like I feel like a jackass today. I really, really, really do, because I went from knowing pretty much 90% in my own mind what and how I thought things were going to play out in Virginia. I went from like a 90%. You know what I should have done? I should have taken the hint that the world was giving me You know, that the powers that be were giving me when they were telling me that I read things upside down in the actual dates. I read it from... Anyway, I should have just taken that hint to say, hey... And I did say that I am a little bit confused about how things operated in Virginia. But I'm going to be honest with you. I still, to this second, am confused of what is going on. So both bills have passed their committees and passed the House and the Senate. And supposedly, from what I'm seeing here, the House bill, what I'm confused on, and I'm really embarrassed on this, because I gotta say, this is the first time I can remember in a long time that I have been thoroughly confused with the way that the legislative process works in a state. Because here's the thing, is I just read a news story from, I think, a local news station in Virginia that talked about how the House bill had passed and it went into effect in a few months or whatever. Not whatever, but in a few months, whatever is the date there. And then the Senate bill, I need somebody who knows exactly what's going on to explain to me what the hell is going on. But at the same time, who would have predicted 10 years ago that Oklahoma would be a spot? Yeah, but also paying attention to what's going on right at the moment and being able to understand that too. What's the excuse? I kind of failed on this one. I'm somewhat embarrassed on these. Because here's the thing. So I got to a point where looking at these, we didn't do a show yesterday. So I was looking at these early yesterday and then late yesterday. And during that time, I became under the impression that if both of these passed, the House and the Senate, so that the House passed theirs, the Senate passed theirs, then the bills would be combined. And then during the next get-together of the floor, it would be discussed then. But that would be after today. So if the bills passed, they would make it into one bill and then argued on the floor at a later date, which made zero sense to me. I was like, how the fuck does that happen? I mean, does that... Man, I really see what's crazy and the really, like, I guess kind of silly and what other people don't understand about all this. It's like, now I truly want to work for a news station in Virginia and cover politics. Like, is that sick? Is that wrong? Is that like... Am I like crazy for that? It's just like, God, this want and this need deep down inside the loins that are just like, we have to learn it. We must inject ourselves in the middle of this chaos. Oh, we're dropping frames. Why is it that we drop frames when we're just sitting here doing nothing? And then when I'm playing a game like Hitman, which is heavily graphical, we drop 0 frames. I don't know. I think we figured out the camera's 720p, by the way. Native. And then it fits to any other format we want to put it to. So it'll still be 720p. And then they'll try to upscale it. And it'll get farked up because when you go to change the sharpness, you could see the pixels and how they're stretched when you hit the sharpness. Like, I could pull it up here, but I'm not going to because we're talking. We want to stay focused today. But I was trying to fix the camera. We'll get that dialed in. Whatever. I care, but I truly care about Virginia's process more. But I did go in and find the sharpness of stuff. When you click it over, you could see the expansion. So, God, these zoomers in there have to do everything sharp and shiny. But ultimately, I think this House bill is passed. So, God dang, man. I have a love-hate for Virginia now. So, here's the story. I guess I closed this out because I was just disgusted with myself. We'll read it. It's pretty quick. We also have stories from Jamaica today. And then, what else do we have here? Let's go ahead and close that one out. We have stories from New Jersey. If we get to this one, signed psilocybin bill. See, I called it psilocybin again. Psilocybin. That's a hard word. California clears up confusion over coronavirus vaccine and who gets the vaccine first in the industry, or if the industry should get the vaccine first there. And then I have this story on Virginia, but this is also done for like 3 hours ago or something. Let me move that over there. Pick that up at the beginning. Washington lawmakers introduce long-awaited bill to decriminalize all drugs and expand treatment. And New York lawmakers slam governor's marijuana legalization plan while touting their own bill. It seems like something changes every day in New York, which makes sense when it comes to this legalization shiz. Idaho Senate passes measure to block marijuana legalization even if voters approve the ballot. So the House has got to approve this, and then this becomes a pretty big problem. We'll get to that right away, too, after the Jamaica and Virginia discussion. And then one more senator gets marijuana commitment from Biden's Small Business Administration nominee. So one more on the list of government peoples that we have that we could count on, and one more on the list that we can pretty much, start to point towards and use in our discussions of decriminalization is not going to be the way that things go. We're actually going to see robust cannabis legalization, baby. And by robust, when I say robust, I mean comprehensive. Comprehensive cannabis legalization. I don't care what the weather's like in Virginia. Actually, what is it like in Virginia? That may play a lot into how we... 51 in Virginia? What is it here? Hold on a second. Let me see what it is here. 45 feels like 36. And it felt a lot warmer than that when I went out and played with the maulers. Ooh, see, that was one of those moments we could have gotten in trouble right there. We would have had the screen up. What up, Tech? Okay, so I'm going to use this opportunity to train myself. God. Do you mind if I say your real name? There's only 3 people in here. Jabari. I feel like such an absolute moron when it comes to names, and when I read them wrong the first time, there's a good and say them wrong in my head the first time, there's a good chance that I say them wrong every day afterwards. Your name is one of them. And it's one of those situations where it's not like just saying the name wrong. It's like, in my mind, somewhat disrespectful. Like, so, God, I apologize. Thank you for following Ganja Blazer, you the man. All right, this is the House of Delegates made a significant move Friday and voted to legalize marijuana. This is going to be confusing because there's still another bill we have to talk about, and then how these bills got engrossed together. I'm telling you right now, if you read everything I read, you might understand it, but I don't think you would. Like, I feel so stupid when it comes to this shit right now. Because even this article makes it seem like it's cut and dry, and it's not. It's not. It's Virginia. All right, House Bill 2312 was passed with a 55 to 52 vote. The bill will eliminate criminal penalties for marijuana possession for anyone 21 and older. According to the Virginia House, the bill also modifies several other criminal penalties related to marijuana and provides for an automatic expungement process for those convicted of certain marijuana-related crimes. The bill will also establish a regulatory scheme for the regulation of marijuana cultivation facilities, marijuana manufacturing facilities, marijuana testing facilities, marijuana wholesalers, and retail marijuana stores by the Virginia Alcoholic Beverage Control Authority, renamed the Virginia Alcoholic Beverage and Cannabis Control Authority. So this bill passes, but then what happens with the bills being engrossed together and then sent to the floor? Like that, where did that conversation come from? Like, yeah, I see this. I had a heart attack early yesterday when I realized I did not understand this. I understood half this. And I was like, I almost messaged you in your logistics, probably not even still in here. I almost messaged logistics in his Discord yesterday and like personally apologized. But then I was like, man, I don't even know if I'm like 100% wrong or what the deal is. So I'll just wait. Just wait for the day. He'll probably be in the chat. So, engrossed by Senate committee substitute with amendments. This is the Senate bill. This one heads to the floor. Because here we go. This has nothing. This has nothing after it. So this bill is done. So this goes printed as engrossed. So this is the engrossed bill. I'm so confused as to what they meant before. Like, I thought both of these bills were going to be somehow put together and then approved, and then if they were approved by today, that they would be argued on the floor at a later date, which is part of what I read yesterday. Because this is the end of like the mid-session deadline or something. You know what I'm saying? Just it's not in here. You can't explain it. Dang it. Why do you leave? People in their regular jobs. So I don't know. I honestly don't know. At this point, we're on for a ride. I'm pretty sure the House bill is done and over with. It's the Senate that we have to think about. But here's the thing: they didn't even like this article. Like, what the fuck? They didn't even argue about this bill on the floor. Like, how it hasn't passed. How can it get sent to the governor's desk for approval? Like, it has not been discussed fully on the whole floor and approved. It's been approved by one side of the House, and then it becomes a House bill. God, I'm so stupid right now. I'm even getting the ones I know screwed up. Let's just move on. This is making me question everything I know. Oh, goodness. It doesn't have to be argued about both sides to become, but it, yeah. I'm an idiot. So it was completely argued on the floor of the House. and passed. So this one's good. So my confusion came from where the two bills were going to be combined. My hand was freezing today. I have bad circulation, especially with the medication I take for some reason. But sometimes my right hand freezes. I don't know why. I don't have to explain anything to you. I'm just kidding. It's like, why is he Michael Jackson out right now? Oh, God. Let's read this and then we'll get to the Jamaica Nabil. Thank you very much if you guys are hanging out with us here on the JDR, just stopping by. Just try to figure out what's going on. We read cannabis news here on the John Doe Radio Show. I am a former radio broadcaster myself, former news guy myself. Somewhat professional when it comes down to the news part of it. That's where we stop the professionalism and then continue on with the rest of the JDR-ism that we have here. So we like to read the news, talk about the news, have guests. Next week, we are going to be having the man himself, Adam Dunn, the man in charge, the main man with TH Seeds. Seed companies and growers probably going to be some of the first people that we have here on JDR until I decide who exactly we want to explain to you concentrates and all that great stuff and how it's done. Probably, if we can get them, and I'm not going to be disrespectful to if Telly wants to, he himself alone would like to do JDR with, say, Max. And maybe, you know, if someday they'd like to invite the D-Money along, that would be cool too. But I think loyalty and knowledge and awesomeness, sticking with the people we've trusted here at the JDR before, definitely would enjoy Max and Telly to be here on the show, kind of discussing how concentrates and all that stuff work for you. Get somebody that is the solventless guru on here. Obviously, we'll get Nick T and talk to him again here on JDR. But next week, we will get Adam Dunn, talk with him, get updated about what he is up to, his podcast, all his seeds, all that great stuff. And yeah, he also has his own podcast going on YouTube. I think he's starting here in a couple hours. I may head over there and say what's up to him today. He invited me on today. But before chaos ensued, I wanted to make sure we started the show and got things rolling for you guys. You know what I'm saying? We gotta build these numbers. We gotta keep it going. 1, 2, 3, 4. Monday through Friday, Saturday through Sunday. 9 to 5. Bike has a podcast? I mean, Bike has a podcast called the John Doe Radio Show. Logistics. You just got back here. So your House bill passed. We just kind of fought through that in my brain mentally. That passed the House. Discussed is done. Now, this Senate bill, that could pass, but does it pass in the Senate? And then, I don't know, dude. Like, what about these engrossed bills? Like, these two I thought were supposed to be put together at some point, but that's not the case. We were lied to. And then this Senate bill, like, printed as engrossed. Like, what? I'm so thoroughly confused on what goes on there. Logistics. Like, at what point? I don't know. I'm almost ready to give up and just wait for... In fact, I think that's the best case scenario right now, is just to kind of, for me to give up and just read and stop inferring, because it doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't. Like, neither one of these bills in my mind should have passed, but they got a last minute push through. This one was pretty close. Virginia House of Delegates on Friday approved a bill to legalize marijuana in the Commonwealth, with a Senate vote scheduled later in the day on that chamber's separate version. So there's going to be a vote later today. Bills have been heard and amended by numerous committees and subcommittees since No kidding. Governor Ralph Northam and top lawmakers unveiled their legalization proposal last month. You know who I should have messaged? It was Kyle Yeager. That's who I should have messaged. House has approved the final version of its bill in a 55-42. They farked the couch on the effective date? What? Oh, yeah. Yeah, you know, it makes a little bit of sense, though. The delay of the bill, I can understand that. Parts of this bill shouldn't be delayed. This shouldn't be delayed. Criminal penalties should go into effect pretty much immediately. Criminal penalty reform should go into effect immediately. That's really the main part of this that shouldn't be delayed. The rest of it is understandable because of the rulemaking process. And as we all know, we ain't all Arizona, all right? Okay. We all can't get her done like the folks in Arizona got her done, okay? You can't talk shit about them there Arizonas. They may like to fry their brains and get it up to 104. They wish it was 104 in the middle of the summer. 112 degrees with 120 degree wind chill. Yep. Ain't no Arizona. So it makes sense. Like, that's not surprising. The part of this that sucks is this leaves, I said it last night on my Facebook, that there are way too many opportunities for the powers that be on the opposite side to come in and throw a wrench into everything everything. It's not even this cannabis legalization in Virginia. It's everything you do in Virginia. There is far too much of an opportunity for someone on the other side, a special interest group, whatever it is, to come in and make changes. Like that, like how do the people get represented in this, in all this? Like how is that possible? It's not. You have a bill that was introduced 5 days ago that passed the House here, had during this whole time, zero input from the people. None. And the input comes with the reliance on the Virginia Alcohol Beverage Control Cannabis Authority, whatever the fuck it is. ABCDEFG LMNOPs. That's what sucks, okay? Like, you continuously see this on the East Coast, is the lack of representation from the peoples during this process. It's like you just elected your officials and sent them on their way, and they're like, we'll handle this, no problem at all. We got this. Sit down. Like, give me a break, man. Like, that's not the way to do it. Now, I'm sure before this there was input, and up till this date, it's not like it's something that's brand new and is happening all over the country and no one's had any input on it. That's not what I'm saying. But the shadiness and the sideways bullshit that comes along with this is rather strong in the Virginia. Let's just say that. It's rather strong. Yeah, this bill has a delayed effect. It doesn't go in effect until 2023. So we'll obviously be talking about this until then. I'm going to waste all my energy on Virginia. Again. Some members spoke in opposition of the legislation during Friday's floor debate. This was the House, claiming that legalization would lead to increased youth. Man, the smoothie. Delegates Don Scott defended the proposal, emphasized that it provides social equity and helps improve those communities who have been impacted. We've already heard that a million times. Friday marks an important mid-session deadline to cross over bills from one chamber to the other. The House version will now head to the Senate, and if the Senate approves its version later in the day, it will be transmitted into the House for consideration. See? But we just read an article from ABC 13 News from the Sinclair Broadcasting Group. Where the hell is this from? We're getting dangerous here, clicking buttons. WSET. This is Virginia. Marks an important mid-session deadline. Crossover bills from one chamber to the other. House version will now head to the Senate, so the one we're talking about right now passing will head to the Senate. If the Senate approves its version later in the day, it will be transferred over to the House. So they're not done. After that point, it's expected that a bicameral conference committee will be impaneled to resolve the differences between the two chambers' bills and merge them into a single proposal that the legislature could send to the desk. So this... So these two bills are passed and they're good to go, but then differences in the bills still have to be made out and put into one to send to the governor's desk. No, I don't think somebody has this right here. Logistics, I need you to do two things. I need you to get a degree in political science based on the focus of Virginia politics, and then come back to me, okay? Can you do that? By 2023, we need you to have that happen. I think you can do it. Boy. Virginia, you're on your own.
You're on your own. I wash my hands of all this.
There's even a chance that the governor could say, "Fark your couch," and just not take any of this. Which, I mean, is always the chance with signing bills into law, that's how it works, blah, blah, blah. We'll just move on to Jamaica. Jamaica running low on ganja. What? Heavy rains followed an extended drought, an increase in local consumption, and a drop in the number of marijuana farmers have caused a shortage in the island's farmed but largely illegal market that experts say is the worst they've ever seen. Oh man, that's so painful to read. When I saw this article today, I was like dumbfounded. Dumbfounded. I could not believe this was the case. I've had multiple friends go to Jamaica, and from my understanding of what Jamaica has been experiencing is a general boom in both the planned business and the allowance of the quote-unquote illegal side of cannabis. I don't know, it's weird to say illegal there. It's illegal in Jamaica. To grow cannabis, but I mean, it's something that obviously is allowed because of many reasons. Mainly the reason being it is their, main source of monetary income when it comes down to it. That and tourism. But when you think of Jamaica, you think of cannabis, and you think of weed, and you think of just the proliferation and the awesomeness of it. Not so much, I guess, right now. It's a cultural embarrassment, says Tristan Thompson, Chief Opportunity Explorer for Takaya, a consulting and brokerage firm for the country's nascent legal cannabis industry. This is a story from the Associated Press, by the way. Jamaica, which foreigners have long associated with pot, reggae, and Rastafari, authorized a regulated medical marijuana industry and decriminalized small amounts of marijuana weed in 2015. Rastafari, they don't like the Ians. That thing put at the end of it. Rastafari. People caught with 2 ounces or less of cannabis are supposed to pay a small fine and face no arrest or criminal record. The island has also allows individuals to cultivate up to 5 plants, and Rastas, like this is culturally rude. Don't add the Ians at the end of it. Are legally allowed to smoke ganja for sacramental purposes, but enforcement is spotty as many tourists and locals continue to buy marijuana on the street where it has grown more scarce and more expensive. Heavy rains during last year's hurricane season pummeled marijuana fields that were later scorched in the drought that followed, causing tens of thousands of dollars in losses, according to farmers who cultivate pot outside the legal system. Because, I mean, if you have the pictures you've seen from Jamaica, I mean, there's not 5 plants growing on the side of a mountain. It destroyed everything, says Danielle Basra, I suck at names, who grows marijuana in the southwest part of Jamaica in a historical village called Akampong, founded by escaped 18th century slave known as Maroons. Man, the history of just the history of things is just amazing. Worsening the problem were strict COVID-19 measures, including 6 p.m. curfew that meant farmers couldn't tend to their fields at night as a routine, said Kendrick Wallace, 29, who cultivates 2 acres in Akampong with the help of 20 other farmers. He noted that the lack of roads forced many farmers to walk to reach their fields and then water from wells and get water from wells and springs. Many were unable to do that at night due to curfew. Wallace estimated he lost more than $18,000 in recent months and cultivated only 300 pounds compared with the average of 700 to 800 pounds the group normally produces. That's the NA number. So if we were to actually put a North American police number on it, $2,500 a pound. Wait, what? Did I do the math wrong on this? Wait, yeah, I did do the math wrong. Wait, I know I didn't do that. Yeah, I did do the math wrong because I'm an idiot. Listen, math. God. I'm so much smarter than I'm making myself seem today. Jesus Christ, I hate this. All right, so pounds is what we're looking for. We'll go 2,500. How do you even get to 18,000 for 300 pounds? Would I do 18,000 divided by 300? Is that what we would do? Is that like what, 60 bucks a pound? Check my math. 60 times 300. Yeah. I just solved a math problem, guys. Wow. I swear to God, if it weren't for weed, we would never, ever touch math our entire lives, ever again. Me, meaning we, meaning me. We.
Dude, 60 bucks a pound is what this guy sells weed for. $60 a pound.
$750,000 sold at $2,500 a pound. So the manufactured cost, the literal manufactured artificial cost that goes into cannabis. Can you imagine if, man, it's just, there's so many areas in the world that need to have a strong infrastructure that have had the cultural base and the heart of cannabis at it for so many years. To see them struggle, for instance, Amsterdam and Jamaica, to see them struggle with laws and rules, and their economy is frustrating. It really truly is. It's because we've relied on these locations for so long, you know, as being a part of the culture, number one, and then two, if it were not for these places and these pillars, we may not have the progress that we have today when it comes to the cannabis laws. And it's very important that we remember those type of things, you know, and remember where our roots came from, and give credit to those roots, and give credit to the people that got us here, especially if they're still around, you know? People that are in jail today for cannabis related offenses. Can't just forget about these type of things. It's something that's extremely important. And every day that we move forward and we sell cannabis in stores, we're allowed to grow cannabis in these massive facilities, and then at the same time, less than, you know, how many miles away, we have jails, and we have, even from me, where I'm sitting right now, less than 5 miles away is a federal penitentiary where the man Jared himself from Subway is sitting. Yes. The Oklahoma Bombers, one of them, was in there. And I mention those people because there are also cannabis offenders sitting right next to these people in those federal facilities with sales for dispensaries going on all around them. And it disappoints me so much that we've reached such a positive point and such a tipping ground federally. We're talking about, like, legitimately talking about, we are going to end up with legalization here on a federal level, period. And we still have not solved this problem of misbalance and equity, of justice and equity. It's disturbing, and it seems like every chance we get to move a step forward, we are taking 2 steps back in this specific situation. You know, it's extremely frustrating. And, you know, I have to tell myself the same things that we've talked about earlier this week, that one thing at a time, and including reform and including letting people out of jail and expungements and etc., are these extra added pieces that have become comfortable, you know, like Virginia and other states to be able to pass. Hopefully federal level, we include things, you know, expungement. Dear God, please let some people out of jail for it. But that wouldn't have been possible without the hard work of these states to this point. So I understand, I get it. It's one thing at a time. When we've introduced these bills before that have been combined with expungements and then legalization, they haven't gone over well. They've failed. But now we're getting to the point where we can include those things because they're part of the successful program. They're part of the successful framework of a system you're creating in your state. We're not there yet. We're not getting there. We have a responsibility, though, to protect people's civil rights. We do. Constitution means nothing if we do nothing to work towards defending it. They continue to push it by the wayside and laugh it off. Yeah, it's like it's like they take cannabis reform seriously and that it's not a dangerous drug. You know, in a lot of people's minds, these lawmakers' minds, they probably equal it to the same as alcohol, the same as cigarettes, maybe no more, maybe no less, maybe a little more, maybe a little less. And the flow of their constituents and the people that voted them in, now allows them to, let these ideas of legalization through. But the idea of letting someone who's quote unquote a loser, as I learned, someone with a misdemeanor or a felony conviction in the Merriam-Webster dictionary, defined as a loser, two-time loser. But yeah, that's just it. That's it right there. They define these people as losers, and that they are they're in a separate category of whatever, like it's like they're people that are in the system are a different class of people. 100% when these things come down to talk. You maybe don't say that, but it 100% is that. Because these rules and these things don't apply retroactively. They don't apply. Just the application is separated once you're in that system. And if we're talking about civil rights and we're talking about what is just, then starting with that conversation of having these people separated out is not that you can't start a conversation that way. If that's where we're headed, is for equity and to get things right, starting a conversation off of having these two separate things and not inclusive, that doesn't work. That doesn't work out. How do we move forward? It's like, if we put it in game terms, if we were playing Tetris here, we failed Tetris because everything is just so screwed up. There's no way we can stack things up and win the game. Like one side is like all the way to the top, and we're like, oh, what happened? The other side's like perfect. It's like, oh shit, we forgot about the other side. We lost the game. They're connected people. That makes sense. The success of these two sides are connected. That's who else we're gonna get on next week. I just made my decision. That's who we're gonna talk with. We're gonna try and get the man himself, Robert Platshorn. We're gonna get the Black Tuna himself. Talk with him about spending 30 years in prison. Almost 30 years in prison. And then now getting out of prison and having his own strain of cannabis. One of the only people that I would trust to go in and talk with law enforcement officers, and he has done it. Anyone else, I'd say, no, don't. I would be offended. Like, we cannot go in and sit down with law enforcement officers and have discussions with them. It's just not a good faith conversation. Can't do it. But if they're inviting Mr. Platshorn in to say it's like a Lions Club thing, but it's like the Fraternal Order of Police type of thing. Like I don't know exactly how those type of things work with the police, but it's like a lodge type situation. If you're invited into that, that's a little bit different than the training side of things. So I have no right to judge Mr. Platshorn on anything he does. We'll talk to him about that and cool stuff he's been doing on that side of things. He did have his wife pass away, and she supported him the entire time. Well, we've talked to him before. They had their ups and downs, but the entire time he was in prison. Oh, man. Just such a sad, horrible... The drug war has destroyed more families than arguably almost anything else in the history of America. And it is impossible to put that number on paper and to actually put numbers into it, but all involved, everything included. Money, those who are affected by it. There's not a single person in America who could say there's not someone's like within their close family or a close friend that has not been affected by the drug war in some sort of way. It's not possible. And it's negative. It's all negative, technically, unless you are a police officer who has received the grants and is actively gaining from this system. It is a negative every single time, and how anybody can consider this a successful system and a successful quote unquote war. I mean, they're lying to themselves, and no one does. There's not a single person where you hear talk about the drug war being successful to this day other than police or ultra conservatives. Because they know if they say it gets to a point where their constituents start calling bullshit on them. And you start sounding like, one of the people that raided the Capitol. You become this outlier and this what's the word I'm looking for? Extremist when it comes down to it. Speaking of extremists, Idaho Senate on Wednesday approved a resolution to amend the state constitution to prevent marijuana or other drugs from being legalized. If the House follows suit, the action could create serious complications for activists who are seeking to put cannabis reform measures on Idaho's 2022 ballot. Senate State Affairs Committee approved the resolution along party lines last week, and the full chamber has now passed it 24-11. If it gets 2/3 majority in the House as well, it will be placed before voters in the midterm election ballot. The measure stipulates that production, manufacture, transportation, sale, delivery, dispensing, distribution, possession, use of psychoactive drug shall not be permitted in the state of Idaho. It would make an exception for substances that are approved by the FDA, but it would effectively kneecap efforts to establish medical cannabis programs that look anything like those implemented in other states. Nothing would be allowed. You would have a few drugs that are on the pharmaceutical level. You have a nasal spray, and you have a few pills. You have a few sprays, and you have a few pills now. But as we've talked about before, we have not figured out how to take apart the puzzle of cannabis and put it back together. And when we figure that out, then we'll maybe be at a point where we can create drugs inside of a lab that mimic the exact capabilities of what cannabis can do, and possibly even better. I think that the pharmaceutical companies are just like any other drug dealer and have taken advantage of certain situations, but I also think that without pharmaceutical and drug companies, we would have some pretty shitty diseases on our hands, and viruses and other shit. So we take the good, we take the bad. Obviously, one of the most greedy and evil industries when it comes down to it, we would like to think that healthcare should be a right for everybody, and the right to pursue happiness and health. It's sad that there is, business formed off of that. I think the capitalist in me dies more and more the older I get, and the more that I see people struggle. But that's also the bleeding heart side of things, that understands that that's not the true brain understands, this is not the way that things work, fortunately, but should work this way. What makes the measure problematic for advocates is that should the legislature ultimately approve it, resulting constitutional initiative on the ballot would take precedence over any statutory legalization measure that appears alongside it, which is what is going on right now. You have this, if it does make it to the vote of the people, this would compete against the legalization. The medical marijuana. Wait, is it medical or for approved kind of Idaho's? Yeah, medical cannabis measure. See, And other initiatives in the works to legalize recreational purposes would be rendered null and void regardless of whether a majority of Idahoans pass either of them. I don't know what it is in Idaho. Like, why it was, you would have been one of the last states I would have ever imagined. Maybe because I just don't know shit about Idaho. One of the last states, just because of your location and who you're surrounded by. Like, I didn't think that you would go this hard. Like, maybe Wyoming or Utah. Even Utah, when pressured, just flopped over. I mean, literally, the lawmakers and the state legislature, the laws, just like, it's like there's some big barking dog you're afraid to come at, because of religious purposes, and say, oh no, we can't do this in Utah. And then, like, here comes the dog whisperer. Just weed just goes in and you're like rubbing the belly of the dog. I don't know what I'm talking about. But Utah flipped quick and easy. And then legislators try to come in and change it at the last minute. It was like one of those things where the door was being closed and you're like you weren't even gonna make it. You weren't even gonna make it close to the elevator door being closed. And you like got your finger in there and it like squashed your finger and you're like, "Aye." That's what happened in Utah. But Idaho, Idaho. Oh, God. As it stands, the state is already mostly surrounded by neighbors that have legalization on the books, with Montana voters approving policy. The police change in November. What was the police change? Approved a pair of marijuana legalization initiatives. Whatever. I gave up on Montana, too, a while ago. Excuse me. Let me mute this and blow my... We gave up on Montana a while ago. Montana had it going good, and then went backwards completely with everything. Stores, the whole 9 yards, awesomeness, like actual production model that was going to work. Then you ended up with a Molotov through one of the storefront's windows. And then a change of the bills to eliminate the stores in the state. And then a change to eliminate access and possession. Yeah, y'all messed up. Apparently, according to Virginia Normal, the hope is that both bills get passed. Reading the chat here. Both bills get passed to get crossed over into committees to blend both into a single bill for the governor to sign. Yeah. That's what I'm trying to understand. Is like they're so... That's why this, like, even Virginia news doesn't understand what's going on. There's no mention of that in this news story from Virginia. And usually if I don't understand something, I go and look at the local news, and then down here at the bottom, it'll explain to me how it plays out, like it does here. But then we go look over here, and it says nothing. This is passed. Yeah. That's what I'm talking about. So they're supposed to get engrossed into one bill and then discussed on the floor, and any differences in the bills or things that are the same. See, that's the other thing, and why it's so stupid. Like, why didn't they do that? The process is just upside down compared to a few other places. That's the difference. It's upside down and it makes sense, but it's too much room to allow for bullshit to make their way through. Like, why is it? It's no wonder why it was introduced 5 days before today. Like, literally was introduced a week ago to almost the minute now. Both bills were. And then it makes sense. If the final versions of the bills were not going to be approved this Friday, it makes sense why they were introduced so late. So that part of it is making more and more sense to me of the process. You guys have way too much shit to discuss there. You have way too much time on your hands. Like, there's a lot of meat going on there. So let's finish off this Idaho story. I gotta go use the restroom. Use my hourly restroom break I'm allowed. An attempt to put medical cannabis on the ballot in 2020 was abandoned due to signature gathering complications due to coronavirus. Electronic petitioning was overturned also. We talked about that earlier this week, about the hardships of people collecting signatures, petitioning. And facing the same kind of thing in Nebraska. So, crazy. All right, I will be back. I'm going to hit a 60-second commercial here, so people coming in don't hit. It is the weekend. Twitch likes to hit those commercials big time on the weekend. So if we can prevent those pre-rolls, I'm going to do it. I'm pretty sure I got it all set up here. I will be right back. I'm going to use the restroom. We still have a ton of news to get to. All right. And logistics, make sure you're going to keep me up to date on that. We could flip over and see. Actually, when I get back, we'll flip over and see if they haven't already got to the vote. Wait, where's my Twitch commercial? Is it? It's not telling me. Commercial ran. Hold on. Channel. Mute. Pause. Where's my commercials at? God dang it. Oh my God, I don't know. I'll be back.
until a second vote of the General Assembly. It's anticipated that would be January 1st, 2024, that it would actually be available.
Mr. President, would the gentleman yield for further questions?
Senator Yield.
I yield.
Senator Yield, you have the floor.
And Mr. President, I ask the gentleman, so legalization of marijuana will begin on what date?
The penalty currently in place for marijuana would be repealed July 1st.
Mr. President,
The legal product would be available, as I said, in 2024.
Further question?
Mr. President, I ask the gentleman, with the penalty being repealed on July 1st of this year, so in a few months, what is the maximum amount of marijuana an individual can possess before there will be a penalty?
Senator floor.
No more than an ounce.
Further question?
Mr. President, I ask the gentleman.
I believe it's an ounce is the July 1st limit. If he wants to point me to a line number in the bill, I can check, but otherwise it's an ounce. That's my intent. 11,000 what?
Mr. President, with 11,000 lines, it might take me a few minutes to find the line if the gentleman is not aware of where it is.
Further question?
No, Mr. President.
Thank the senator. For what purpose does the Senator from Prince William County, Senator McPike, rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. Speaking to the bill.
Senator's the floor.
Thank you. We've got to love a debate on cannabis that starts at 4:20 in the afternoon. A couple of things I wanted to appreciate. First off, the level of collaboration through subcommittees and committees that has occurred on a bipartisan fashion, even though I think there are still some differences.
Oh, damn.
I think there's a lot of construction
I was muted.
and constructive dialogue along this way. I think the bill still has a journey as it obviously goes through the House and likewise the House version over to the Senate. I'd like to just point out a couple things from a very pragmatic standpoint. In addition to what the co-patron, Senator Lucas, indicated in terms of the disparity of arrest rates, which was very clear in the JLARC report, I think there's also a very pragmatic point to be made in terms of concerns over product safety. What this actually does is provide a framework for a regulatory framework that gives you an ability to regulate the amount of THC. Not only that, the product quality, ensuring that contaminants, pesticides, and the rest of it are not in the products. Without that, you have product that we know that's on the streets right now that has contaminants that might be laced with something else. So this is, from my standpoint, understanding that this occurs in our community. People consume different forms of cannabis today. Moving forward with this new independent regulatory agency, we'll provide
everything sounds better with a bed
safety factor, testing factors, and the rest of it to provide a safe product. And again, you can limit the amount of THC within those products. So I think there are some upsides in addition to the efforts on public health in terms of the revenue dedication, the Cannabis Equity Fund, and several other efforts which I think are critical. So I hear some of the criticism from the Senator from Lynchburg. However, I think there are some due considerations on the safety and product safety factor which are important to this debate, and also ask that the bill pass. And I think we'll hopefully see this bill improve as it continues through the process. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator, what purpose does the junior senator from Virginia Beach, Senator Kiggins, rise?
Mr. President, would the patron yield for a question?
Senator Yield. Senator Yield, you have the floor.
Thank you. To ask the patron what consideration, if any, has been given just to ensure that no harm is done to the medical cannabis industry, given their important role just with providing medical product to patients. And a lot of those guys have just opened their doors. For example, the medical dispensary that serves the Hampton Roads region has only been open for 5 weeks. So just out of concern, could you just specify what's protective in the bill?
Sure. I thank the senator for the question and for the concern for the burgeoning medical providers. The bill allows for the medical providers to have as many as 5 retail licenses each. in addition to the licenses that they already have to produce the product. So I don't see any harm done to those medical providers, and it's our intention to do all we can to see that they're not harmed.
The medical providers need to understand that they're heading towards recreational is the way to go, that they need to have access to medical. Okay, that's fine. That's their right, and they want to morally provide that, and it's a big thing for medical providers. I understand that. It is. So with saying that, what needs to happen is these medical providers need to use the recreational system and their 5 licenses that they have to somehow make those, one of them at least, into a into a money-making situation that can help also support the medical side of things. You know, like, that's just the way it is. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. That's what you're going to have to do to make it succeed.
On hospice, people in long-term care who can't get to some of these other venues, they have access to this pharmaceutical product. So I just think we need to be mindful of being protective and asking ourselves a question of what this type of legalization of adult recreational marijuana is going to do to that industry. So in 2016, Oregon, for example, who's kind of on the spearhead of this adult legalization, they had over 400 medical dispensaries for medicinal marijuana. After they legalized their adult use product, which was legal in 2014, they are now down to only 1 in the state of Oregon. There is only 1 medical dispensary left in Oregon. And we have spent so much time and so much money, and again, made so many rules and regulations, and I feel like they're doing it right. And for me to say that, I had to see that with my own eyes. But I want that industry to succeed, to be there for the patients who need it, to be there for the hospice people who need it for seizures, for epilepsy, for cancer pain, people who are in long-term care facilities. So I think that we need to let that succeed and let that industry grow. And I just worry that we're doing too much too soon. Wrong. I wish we would slow the roll with this whole rollout process. I understand the rationale behind it, but we have just a new fledgling industry that I think is a lot of potential. And I would like to see the benefits to the healthcare industry. And so I just worry that what we're doing is too much too soon. If I could ask one more question to the patron.
Oregon absolutely has more than 1 medical dispensary.
Clarify what exactly is in this bill about driving safety protocols as well, and educating the public, specifically younger people, about driving safety.
I don't even know how she could say that. That's
yes,
wild.
One of the enactment clause calls for public safety campaigns to begin at least 6 months before legalization. Further, Senator Lucas and I have put budget amendments in to train officers in advanced techniques to deal with people who are impaired when they drive. They have a program now that does that, but we want to be able to train more officers, starting with this year's budget.
The thing is, if you don't include a bill that introduces exactly,
that's just an important piece I want to make sure is in place.
If you do not include,
so just in closing from me, I sat in the subcommittee as well in 11 hours on a great education on this whole adult rollout program, and there were many times, I could probably count on both hands, the number of times the question when we didn't know exactly how to refine the code or how to tweak the bill, the question was asked, well, what do we do in Oregon? What do we do in California? And we would look and mimic a lot of the times what's going on there. So I just want to pose that question as well. We're Virginia, we're the Commonwealth of Virginia, we're not Oregon, we're not California. I have some concerns about going there too fast, too soon. Thank you, Mr. President.
But she's using the medical program.
Thank the Senator. For what purpose is the senator from Arlington, Senator Favola, rise?
All right. So unless you have a system that allows for drug driving prosecution specifically for cannabis, and that it is a level 0.05 nanograms per milliliter, is what it'll probably end up being. Unless that's in there, you will be able to defeat the DUI system that is currently in place in any state when it comes down to it.
We had a 2-hour block of time where we really delved into this proposal and took public comment. And there were significant points made about the need to set a framework that would establish a rational way for allowing marijuana into the marketplace, that we would consider social equity, but we would consider a limited retail composition or retail concentration, so we would not overwhelm any one geographic area. I think as we now have it, localities will opt out. Is that correct, to the senator from Alexandria? So that probably will ensure that most localities will participate. And I believe that they have the option of holding a referendum. So there's yet another opportunity for public comment. We focused a lot on the safety of this. This is adult use marijuana. I know that the proposal that the governor put forth had an education campaign. It had significant protections in there.
Get your mouth away from
and
the
just
mic.
as with the sale of alcohol, the sale of marijuana to a minor would have up to a $2,500 fine or 12 months in jail. It would be treated very seriously. Enforcement would be taken very seriously. And the regulatory process will start July 1. And again, the regulatory process is going to be a very open process. The stakeholders will
The ID
have to
checks and the
convene,
system of
get
people
together,
buying cannabis is
comment.
extremely robust and like
Regulations will be
checked
revised again.
very more,
and
much
then,
more
of course,
harshly
the actual
than
sale,
alcohol.
I think we have for January 1, 2024.
It works out really well.
So this is a framework, is my message here. We think
On that
we've
side of
got
safety
some of the
things,
key
you should do well
factors
with
in
that.
place to ensure that we have a fair market. We allow some integration where we need it. We allow social equity. We focus on adult use. And then, of course, we have other protections. I know the Judiciary Committee worked extensively on
Focusing on adult use includes
the
social
expungement
consumption.
piece. So I don't
think that's what you mean.
because you haven't read the 250-page document.
I think she meant youth
I wouldn't
prevention.
let that alone concern you. I would just go through the sections that we outlined and highlight the areas that you feel more work needs to be done. And I think that we certainly can ensure that the regulatory process fleshes out the detail. I think this proposal is a good proposal. I believe the time has come, and I would like to see it move forward. So with those comments, Mr. President, I again move that we pass the bill.
Thank the senator. For what purpose, Senator from Henrico? Senator Donovan, rise.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to speak to the bill.
Senator's the floor.
I want to echo the comments of the junior senator from Virginia Beach. What we have done
Virginia
with
Beach.
medical cannabis in Virginia is really important for the patients. And I will point out it took us 5 years to get there. From the first time that bill passed, it was really more than 5 years before the pharmacies opened. And so I see this bill as a starting point, especially when we look at the process of the pharmaceutical processors that are already in place, and that there's a lot of details that are going to be worked out to make sure this is done in a very reasonable and rational way that takes into consideration all of the different important aspects of decision making that we need to have going forward. And I'm pleased to say the regulations are not even enacted until a year from this July.
Why they're talking
they'll
about
be worked
medical
on. So we
marijuana
have plenty of
program
time to work on this bill,
and it's becoming a big issue. It's one thing if there's a bet over, but if there's me and her talking over, I can't even function. Why they're talking about it so big is because they know that their medical marijuana patients, say for instance here in Colorado, the way that this system, I'm basing this on how it's operated in other places, it has the system has cut the medical system in these places pretty heavily. So like there's places in southern Colorado Pueblo, Colorado Springs area that you can't find flower to put in your stores. So, and you have Colorado Springs is a medical only city. They don't have recreational allowed. The mayor there is the former Attorney General, John Suthers of Colorado, who fought against marijuana. I mean, he's more conservative, police action-based representative. It comes from law enforcement. He's former Attorney General in Colorado. And even though he was forced in a situation where he had to defend and fight for medical marijuana, doesn't mean just because his job said he did and the people said he did. He took his feelings to one of the largest cities in Colorado and expanded that. So there's dick. This is a dick move. Like, such a dick move. It's so weird how government and everything works, that someone like that can move to like the mayor, and like the people of Colorado told you they didn't want it this way. You had to fight it, and then you had to fight for us, and then you went and took it to Colorado Springs, one of the largest places there is in Colorado, and passed or prohibited recreational marijuana. And yeah, what it comes down to is there's more money in the recreational market. So you have a situation to where producers and the like become limited. So the sales and the access to what is available on the market is snatched up quickly. And in a lot of situations, quality becomes an issue with the people that are left. So you have this quality issue of not having anything on the market, or you have an issue of not having anything on the market, and then you have a quality issue with the things that are on the market. And then when you do get something quality-wise, that flies off the shelves, So, I mean, there was so many times that I went down to dispensaries in Colorado Springs, whether it was to do deliveries for concentrate, because when I worked for Less Concentrate Company, we service medical and recreational. And then I spent a lot of time in Colorado Springs doing education and working with the shop owners down there, especially at the very beginning, because there was a lapse with recreational. Oh, the puppers once in here. There was a lapse in recreational, and anyway, I spent a lot of time on that side of things. So it's just how the system works. And if you don't have recreational supporting that in some sort of way, it will flounder, If you and especially in an area like Virginia, where you have something that has just started and then recreational comes in, you don't have any basis. You don't have any groundwork, any foundation for your medical marijuana facilities, and really when it comes down to it, for the patient base to be able to support that, to be able to support that industry. And probably why it's becoming such a big issue here, not only because they've noticed it become an issue in other states that have had robust foundations for medical cannabis, but in Virginia, I mean, you barely have things going at all with that. So that system itself, could crash. But here's the thing: is you also have those storefronts, as we heard at the beginning of this, are allowed 5 licenses per medical marijuana license. So that's another step forward. Also gives the ability in that sense, in the sense of thinking about progress and building a foundation for recreational side of things. You have some experienced people that are already licensed getting into it that can kind of have things ready to go when everything's rolled out, have it, this is sort of like a double check rollout. They've done it once, medical marijuana. The second time, a little bit easier when it comes to the recreational side of things. It's going to be busier, more demand. a bigger hurdle to step over, and you're going to have two things, like Oklahoma had, which is probably not going to happen in Virginia, it sounds like, as much as it did in Oklahoma, and that's the allowance for outside producers to come into the state and be licensed or to partner with these groups, depending on how restrictive regulation is in a state. That's going to determine who from outside comes in at the beginning. And for a place like, say, Oklahoma, who probably didn't have a very big underground, to be able to transfer that up to a retail business, quality products is what I'm talking about. The strains already in the region that are growing strong with growers, those type of things. From transferring it from the street level, which was already in some places a retail type system, quote unquote, that had products in it, and then put that on a storefront, there's not a lot of places that have that ability. You know, you have places in California, Colorado, you know, maybe Massachusetts. There's probably spots in Texas like Austin that would be able to, you know, maybe do something like this. Virginia, not too familiar with, you know, your underground and stuff with the look of things. Doesn't look like you necessarily have that, and it doesn't look like you're necessarily let the licensing process come in from the outside. But we haven't even got to that point. Once these bills are passed, then it gets into that regulatory system of what they're talking about, later date of hammering out things. Some of these things they're being a little bit over the top about and a little bit not so honest about. Some of these things are going to be the solid framework that cannot be changed, and then the laws will be formed underneath these frameworks. So to hammer out some of these more important things that they're talking about, sentencing and expungements, those are completely separate. Those need to be talked about right now, and what is allowed and what we expect, and then the program, once it's passed, will be implemented and carried out that way, and then overseen by the state legislature and whatever program they put in place of that. But at a later date, it's really only the regulatory details that they will hammer out. For instance, like we're talking about licenses from other states. So it all really just depends on how the program is built in your state to how successful that program ends up being with medical marijuana. You know, so it could be like Oklahoma, and then allow these companies that and people from outside that come in and start up things that are not reinventing the wheel. They already know how things are done. That's important. So hopefully that type of thing can get done. You know what I'm saying?
I've never seen a study that shows kids that smoke marijuana or teens or adults, because you know they're going to get it, whether it's for adults or not. Just like the senator from, I don't have my list in front of me, Senator Saslaw mentioned, you know, it started with alcohol. We can see exactly what's going to be the path for legalization of simple possession of marijuana. It's going to be the same path that alcohol has taken, where we have kids that have overdosed,
what?
Mothers Against Drunk Driving.
No. Because
of the issues that alcohol and under influence has created. And I just think we're going down a dangerous path.
Well, here's the thing: is it's a good thing that you can't overdose from cannabis.
What does this mean for our kids? What message are we going to send today with this vote? Thank you, Mr. President.
Sit your ass down.
Thank you, Senator.
She can't even think of
Alexandria,
anything.
Senator Evan.
You're like sitting there trying to like search for things to say anti-cannabis, and then she goes overdose, and then she realized that was a pretty big mistake right off the bat.
Senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Thank you. Excuse me for interrupting you.
No,
I like that old guy, that last old guy they had on here.
Evan wanted to wrap up. First of all, let me say I have not read the 250-some pages or the 11,000 lines. But I did attend a 3-day conference out in Denver, Colorado, dealing with the legalization of marijuana and what their experiences have been, both from a usage standpoint, a marketing standpoint, and a regulatory standpoint. I was amused at my dear friend, Senator Saslaw, who always is so accurate in recalling the chronology of various bills.
I like this guy.
And he shared with us liquor by the drink and how that has evolved over the years. I understood his point that this legislation will have to evolve over the years. Huge difference. Huge difference. When we were doing liquor by the drink, it was against the law in the Commonwealth of Virginia for anyone other than the regulated industry to manufacture liquor commonly known as moonshine. As Colorado went through it, and as Virginia is moving in that direction, it is going to authorize the legal raising of marijuana plants in your backyard. And I understand the various stages that it has to go through and the monitoring on the THC. But if you think for a second that young people are not going to be tempted with the immediate proximity of marijuana plants in their backyard to partake of it, I think you're very naive.
Oh, come on,
Mr.
man.
President, if Senator Evans would be so kind to yield for a question or two.
Senator Yield.
What is he talking about?
I yield.
Senator Yield, you have the floor.
What is he talking about?
I would say ask the senator to explain for me, because I have noticed that some euphemisms have been absolutely pervasive during this session and in the special session that we have. Would you please define for me so that in my very simplistic mind, I can understand what the euphemism of social equity means in this legislation?
Oh, he's losing me now.
The floor.
Sure.
Oh, wait, he's
in
just
a
asking
larger
word.
sense,
Okay.
the message of social equity is that we don't penalize black and brown adults over fear of a plant. But in terms of specific actions, there are three ways that social equity is in the bill. We expunge past marijuana misdemeanors and allow for petition expungement for other marijuana crimes. We provide funding to go into some of the communities that have been harmed by the war on marijuana for things like reentry, scholarships, job training, and lastly, we
anything bad about
don't limit
cannabis
this industry
equity.
just to big business, that we allow
just
for
gonna
some
shut this
who've
off
been
and go to the
harmed by
next news story,
marijuana
'cause
to
I failed.
actually participate in this new industry.
Can't judge anything.
I appreciate the gentleman's response. If I could follow up on that, and once again, I am never ashamed to admit my own ignorance in this. It's because I haven't read the entire bill. Is there any preferential treatment under the licensing provisions to any particular population in the Commonwealth of Virginia as it relates to those licenses?
Senator Yield, you have the floor.
I yield, yes. There are social equity licenses for a variety of people to try and create diverse ownership, whether it's people who attended a historically black college or university, people in a jurisdiction that the board has determined is economically distressed, or that it's disproportionately been policed, or someone who's actually been charged with a marijuana offense.
Yes.
Those
yes.
are among the social equity
Yes.
licenses that
I
would
got
be fleshed
chills.
out by the board.
Mr. President, another question.
Senator Yield.
I yield.
Senator Yield, you have the floor.
So I understand one of the criteria for preferential treatment on the issuance of a license is an economically disadvantaged community. So we're going to give that economically disadvantaged community preferential treatment on receiving a license? Is that what you just told me?
No.
There's the floor.
I yield. No, Mr. President. It would be people who had resided in that community for, I think, 3 of the last 5 years.
Further question?
It's not.
Mr. President, another question.
Senator Yield.
Don't you, Mr. President, I'm sorry. The actual issuance of the license Can there be a absentee individual who maybe resided in that economically deprived community 5 years ago,
This is the stuff
but who
that-
has enjoyed economic success and that he doesn't currently live, he or she doesn't currently live there, but they can get a license and legally dispense marijuana?
These are things that talk about after the bill is passed.
I would state that first they would have to have lived there for 3 of the last 5 years, and further that the license, the geographic location of the license is not tied to the community itself.
Further question?
That answered his question the first time before he even went on with.
Senators, the floor.
Mr. President, as the patron knows, I actually started the advocacy on the decriminalization of marijuana and welcomed his insight and advocacy. And initially, I was supportive of the approach that is encompassed in this bill. I have been persuaded not to support it for a couple of reasons.
No.
Right now.
Nope, I'm out.
First of all, I've got to
I'm out.
say I was shocked when it was referenced the length of the bill and the number of lines, and the comment was made, don't worry about reading it. Don't worry about reading it. We're going to get it straight. That almost is an echo in my mind about what happens in the United States Congress, and specifically on 15,000 pages on Medicaid expansion. Just vote for it, and then you can read it.
This is what happens when you shove shit through.
I pray, Mr. President,
He's not
we
wrong.
are not starting to legislate like that
He's
in
not
the
wrong.
Commonwealth of Virginia. Second point, Mr. President,
Too bad that's the reason.
I certainly am amenable to being educated by some of my friends in a private setting, but I just don't accept this social equity set aside on the issuance of licenses. We don't do it for alcohol. We don't do it for other matters.
Yeah.
And
I'm out with this guy. God dang it, man. See what happens. You get to like an old man because, you think he might have said one or two things that were woke, and maybe you misconstrued that he was being a smart ass with it, and then the old man goes and shows you his true feelings. When it comes down to it, yep. That's where we sit in a situation where this old bastard doesn't understand the need for licensing in a social equity sense, and why over the past 80 plus years, why that time has proven that we need this.
Possess marijuana up to any amount with no distribution, there is no penalty at all.
Thank you, Senator. Senator from Alexandria, Senator Ebbett.
What was that old guy's name?
Speaking to the bill, just to close out a few comments, responding to some of the other thoughts that senators had. First, I don't want to dwell on this, but the administration has certainly spent a lot more time on the coronavirus than on this bill. We directed them to come up with a study, a responsible course, and they did that, helmed by the Department of Agriculture. This is not related to vaccines at all. The bill has pages and pages of safeguards. I encourage people and welcome them to read the bill as it continues through the process. I've read this whole bill. I know that the gentleman from Prince William has, and it's resulted in informed consideration and some good points. I want to thank particularly the junior senator from Virginia Beach. I'm happy to work with her over the interim to address any concerns about how we can continue to see that our medical dispensaries thrive. They're each, though they only have one geographic location open now each, they're each entitled to open, I believe, 5 additional over the next few years. And just to emphasize what the senator from Prince William said, there are limits on THC levels in the bill and the amount that can be sold. There's testing of the product to make sure it's not contaminated with other drugs. To me, that is very, very important We don't want people getting laced with products that they're not expecting and that would serve them poorly. The illicit market will suffer as the legal framework is launched, helping us to keep this away from children. There are penalties for people under 21. So with that, I renew my motion that the bill pass.
Thank the Senator. For what purpose is the senior senator from Virginia Beach, Senator D. Steph, rise?
Mr. President, first of all, I apologize to the body. I truly did not want to stand up and talk on this bill. I had not intended on it. But will the gentleman from Alexander yield for a quick question?
Senator yield.
I yield.
Senator yield, you have the floor.
Mr. President, I've been thinking about this, and I've thought long and hard, and not just today. Can the gentleman answer me, how can you provide preferential treatment for one class or group of citizens over another without diminishing the rights of another group or class of citizens?
Senator's the floor.
Well, I would say that just in terms of the equity license applicant category.
Just because you are not, okay, social equity doesn't mean I'm taking things away from you. It means the opportunity available for somebody else is made a little bit more clear. So you still have that opportunity.
For the equity applicants, in addition to the already existing people with pharmaceutical licenses.
Mr. President, will the gentleman, actually,
All right,
Mr.
I'm done with
President,
this. We'll come back to this here in a little bit. I'm going to finish out the news for today. That way the people on YouTube are not frustrated with me. I notice when we don't stay it straight, the YouTube, we lose them. We lose them. Where's my display? Main. All right, main display. Put you down there. California's finally clarified cannabis industry workers are generally eligible for the first round of coronavirus vaccines, a development that comes weeks after the state officials deflected questions from Marijuana Moment about the policy. At the same time, San Diego County is moving in the opposite direction, relegating cannabis employees to a lower vaccine distribution tier than was previously announced locally. Medical cannabis workers should be in the first round. It's just the way it should be. No matter how you view it, you have people that are in this first round going to these stores that, you know, it's just safer that way. It's just safer that way. Even if you get the vaccine, you know, still wear your mask, still take the precautions. We should still be taking care of that upper level, you know? And if we're talking about every step along the way, trying to, you know, put that building block in place, retail might be one of those first places we go, not just with cannabis sales, but with retail people. And not to mention the retail people were on the front lines of all this bullshit out there the whole time. Give them a little bit of a benefit of the doubt, a little bit of a, hey, confidence boost. That would be nice. Statewide, the California Department of Public Health said in an updated guidance on Thursday that retail marijuana workers are included in Phase 1A of the COVID-19 vaccine rollout, meaning they can qualify as essential healthcare employees. While the state said this applies to medical cannabis workers, many dispensaries in California serve both patients and adult use consumers. The updated notice also clarifies that marijuana industry employees who work in cultivation, production, storage, transportation, and distribution are also included in the first phase, second highest tier, Phase 1B. So that'd be a different phase. 1A, 1B, not also. Stage of the rollout is also currently underway in some counties throughout the state. Medical cannabis workers should be accommodated as necessary by nature of their designations in eligible essential workforce classifications, said the health department. The United Cannabis Business Association was sent a letter to the governor advisory committee last week imploring them to prioritize marijuana workers, celebrated the development. They said, "We wish to thank Governor Newsom for his continued commitment in support of essential cannabis workers." If you're going to mark somebody as an essential worker, and then eliminate them from safety. Like, okay, you're an essential worker, you got to be on the front lines and do your job. But when it comes down to like getting the benefits of what the essential worker means, you know, maybe a little bit of extra pay bonus from the state if that were to ever happen. I think, you know, that was floated sometimes. Being given the vaccine, it's kind of an important part of that. Like, I think that's called discrimination. Plain and simple. A separate coalition of marijuana businesses also asked California policymakers to specifically include cannabis workers in the next phase of COVID-19 vaccine distribution in a letter last month. But for the first weeks of the vaccine rollout, there was confusion within the industry about eligibility requirements, with no clear answers from the state government. Even as Maryland announced that its medical cannabis workforce qualified for an initial round of vaccines, California had vaguely referred to healthcare workers as Tier 1 eligible, leaving room for interpretation by counties and individual providers. The new state notice attempts to clear up all that, but it doesn't mean every county is going to go along with the guidance. Jim Desmond, who serves on the San Diego County Board of Supervisors, criticized the county's decision to prioritize vaccinations for cannabis workers, arguing that they should not be put before law enforcement, firefighters, and teachers. I mean, they should... It's such a misleading thing. What does this guy say here?
Hello, everyone. Supervisor Jim Desmond with you here on Thursday, February 4th, with a COVID vaccination update. Apparently, a couple days ago, the County of San Diego updated their website to adhere to the state guidelines for Phase 1A, which is the phase we're in right now, to include the cannabis industry. So anybody who works in the cannabis industry is now in Phase 1A, along with all of our first responders and people working at healthcare facilities. Those people in the cannabis industry are going ahead of law enforcement. They're going ahead of teachers. They're going ahead of people with... So anybody who works in the cannabis industry is now in Phase 1A, along with all of our first responders and people working at healthcare facilities. Along with all of our first responders.
Okay, so yeah, along with all of our first responders. So this dude is just he's being a discriminatory dickhead. See, we see back here the thin blue line flag we got going on right there. That's disgusting. That's absolutely disgusting. You should be ashamed that you have a representative like this, California. Jim Desmond, San Diego County Board of Supervisors, right here. That's disgusting, what he just said in that video. I'm not even gonna, should we let him finish?
So I've had hundreds of calls a day and emails a day. People that telling me, hey, I can't get an appointment. We hear about all these things opening up, but I can't get an appointment. Well, potentially that could be because they're competing with 20-year-olds who work in the cannabis industry, because those people are allowed
just got worse.
in Phase 1A. This is a terrible move by the state of California to put young, healthy people ahead of those in high-risk essential jobs.
This is disgusting. It is absolutely disgusting to hear. You have people that are in some of the most vulnerable positions, and granted, what he used, 20-year-olds in the cannabis industry getting the vaccinations ahead of people in law enforcement and healthcare workers. They can't get their appointment to get their vaccines because there's a 20-year-old. No. That's your bias and your dickheadedness showing through, okay? It's not just 20-year-old workers in the cannabis industry that need to get this vaccination, all right? There's everybody across the board, all right? All inclusive. It's not just, it's like every other industry in the world. You go to King Soopers, the grocery store, whatever it is, you see, look around, all the people around you that work there. The same type of people, the same makeup of people work in the cannabis industry. If not more of a wide variance of people and of medical conditions. You know, sometimes people have seen the cannabis industry as an opportunity to jump in, to reinvigorate themselves, to jump into another opportunity. The cannabis industry has given people with medical issues jobs time and time again. I've seen it, you know, people that that are normally on some sort of disability have been able to be hired by some of these cannabis companies for, part-time work, for outreach type communication. So it's absolutely disgusting and ridiculous that you would have a representative that would denounce and demonize the health and safety of a certain group of Americans, a certain group of 100%. We're not even talking about. I'm not even going to go there. Not even going to go there because I don't know there's a way I could put this that would sound anything other than just shitty, no matter how I would put it. Even though it's a K-Kona argument. This is the same argument that people have used on the conservative side towards illegal immigrants. And it's disgusting. Disgusting. Washington lawmakers introduced long-awaited bill to decriminalize all drugs and expand treatment. This introduced yesterday. Washington state lawmakers landmark legislation decrim possession of small amounts of all drugs, just like what Oregon's done, expand treatment services for people with substance use disorders. Part of a growing trend in the U.S. states backing away from a crime control model of drug enforcement and instead treating the issue as a public health matter. I think it's exciting that Oregon and Washington have got together on this and have this. The bill made it through. Man, there's a lot of ifs, ands, or buts in that bill, though. Like, it sounds like a decent framework. In fact, giving opportunity to people with cannabis offenses. No, it's a good thing. The only thing I'm concerned about, the one thing that I'm talking about with the glass being half empty and not half full is it's one thing if they create new laws and do away with some punishments and we have expungements, but the side of things that is the retail side of things doesn't sound very great right now. Like, it doesn't sound like, and it's for a reason, because it's at the very beginning and it's framework and things, a lot of things to be hammered out. But it's really just me being a little bit sour probably towards Virginia. So we'll see what happens. The only thing I'm concerned about is the ability for Virginia to create a program with rules that allow the program to succeed. Just as my concern with every other state that does this. That's the important part right now is introducing framework that will allow the industry to breathe. And 30% taxes on top of that, which is crazy. Can you believe that in America today, we have a situation where 30%, 30% and growing accepted tax rates for a sold commodity? Like, that is freaking nuts, man. Like, so if conservatives want to talk about less government and they want to talk about not being up with socialism and everything that it represents, well, why don't we talk about this 30% tax rate? These high taxes that pull in this money. Sure, we got $40 million going into schools every year here in Colorado. You've got a plan in Virginia and these other states for a certain amount of money from taxes that's coming in to go towards certain programs. It's a drop in the bucket for what it ultimately is. $2 billion in sales here in Colorado last year alone, the highest every year. Even with COVID, every year we keep blasting through bigger sales. $2 billion in sales last year. A drop in the bucket of that goes towards schools, treatment, this, that, blah, 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 blah. And then the rest of it, the rest of the bucket, remember, we just took an eyedropper and we dropped it here. The rest of that bucket just gets dumped into the general fund of a state, and then to be used from there where it will. Depending on how your state operates, what kind of fat that it likes to build up, that's a pretty... This is a economy changing situation that is being implemented in states. 100%. The amount of money and taxes that will come in from this will tower liquor income. We cleared that long ago in Colorado. It's because of the tax rate being so high, okay? So, and even if it weren't for the tax rate being so high, people just like to buy weed a lot more than alcohol, at least here in Colorado. So, with all that said, like, if you're not using this money for a productive way and it's just being dropped into a bucket and wasted and shit out the side, I mean, that's socialism right there in itself. Like, it's just, you're using money from the people, 30% tax rate, to benefit programs of your choice that are government created. I mean, it's silly. It's silly. The biggest thing that we've had help here too with the weed thing is where a lot of the money goes. A good chunk of the money for weed sales goes to roads and CDOT here in Colorado for projects. So, which is a good thing, because one day it'll be like snowing. One day it'll be like 80 degrees, and then the next day it'll be like snowing. It doesn't work too well for the roads. And you have that expansion, creates the cracks. You got a plow that comes through, smacks that crack, knocks out a big chunk in the road. Yeah. Logistics. He's in and out. He's like, wait. He's like, I can't. All right, that's all I can take.
Talked the other day about throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
All right, 1406. We moved on. They're on a whole different trip right now. But like I said, it's good that Washington and Oregon, you know, we've got this area up there. I think Colorado is going to move towards this direction also. We have so many other things to focus on right now. The fact that these states got this accomplished right now, and the fact that other states are getting legalization accomplished right now, is solely because of the work that's been done over a combination of years. All right, it's not, they would be unable to do these type of things if it were not for the hard work of the people that have been involved with this since for a long time, because COVID really jacked this whole shiz up. And if we didn't have some of those things discussed and worked out to this point, we may have a situation to where, you know, the economy and COVID, everything that's happened, social equity has presented itself with this, everything has presented itself with this opportunity to introduce cannabis legalization at a retail system in almost every state. If it was just like, surprise, we've got this, and then we allowed these people that we've been listening to this week hammer this out alone, we would be screwed. So the people like yourself sitting at home, interested in this type of thing, giving feedback to your representatives, even feedback on Facebook and social media where the representatives are seeing these things, it's incredibly important, and that's why we're here. And I feel proud sitting in a position here in Colorado, having been able to witness from beginning to end the rollout of these things, and intimately, you know, be involved with a lot of this stuff. It makes me proud to see this happening in other states, you know, but at the same time, you know, you don't have the same involvement of constituents and citizens in other states as you do, you know, say like here in Colorado, California, you know, where it's like home rule, initiative driven, constitutional based. It's not that easy in some other states to have the citizens put forward an initiative, you know, to put something on the ballot to be voted on. Difficult task to do. Should not be as difficult as it is. So therefore, you have to rely on your representative. And luckily, we've elected quite a few progressive people on the Democratic side and gotten rid of some more conservative people on that Republican side that have kind of stood in the way. And it's not just a great thing for cannabis, because I don't want to be, selfish on this issue, even though that's what we're talking about here. But the realization that everybody's the same and giving opportunity to everybody, not cracking down on separation as we have the past 4 years and separating ourselves two sides, like that just sucks. Like we need to head to the direction of coming together on everything. All right? Otherwise, we're never going to get to Mars. You know what I'm saying? It's important that these things are not just cannabis based. And it's weird for me to see right off the bat these legislative sessions just running with cannabis. It's been the main social equity monetary pickup for states, and it's the first time we've seen this big of excitement across the board in a very, very, very long time. The last time that we saw this was in the combination of the West Coast, Colorado, California. California's always been on the page, the first, and they're still on the page. But you have, California, Washington, Oregon, Nevada, Utah jumped on the page late. Idaho is farking the couch right now, understandably. We get that. Montana long ago. All these people were on this train. And then we see the East Coast jump on it too now. Yeah, it's cool. It's cool. The avalanche of things is happening quicker, bringing things around. Colorado, legalization of all drugs and having that. We're almost at that point, really, when it comes down to it. We've changed things slower than what they have in Oregon and Washington. One by one, we've slowly lowered our possession and felonies, etc., to where nothing now in Colorado, when it comes down to a drug charge, should get you thrown in jail. So everything kind of leads to a recovery type situation here in Colorado. It's not as hammered out in one sole swipe as what Washington and Oregon have kind of tried to attempt to do here recently. The important part of what Washington and Oregon have done, that it's not this slow change. It's that avalanche of everything at once, but also including on top of that how the plan, a robust plan of recovery and treatment for people that are with this. So in other states, for Colorado, for instance, it's been a slow morph into something like this, and then still, kind of lacking funds and lacking a base system other than kind of padding the state system that we've had for a long time, and padding as we've gone along the mental health care all-togetherness of the state, which really, when I say pad, doesn't really mean anything. We haven't really done a whole lot with that side of things. We've just trusted and left it up to these type of changes. Basically, instead of the pipeline going from jails and criminal punishment, it's gone towards the mental health side. So it's just kind of switched, this pipeline gone to here without adding too much to this side of things to back it up, which was frustrating. Oregon, Washington, the opposite. Substance disorder among the only health conditions for which a person can be arrested for displaying symptoms, said the new Washington bill, House Bill 1499, sponsored by Lauren Harris and Kristen Harris Talley. Treating substance disorders like a crime through arrest and incarceration further disrupts and destabilizes the lives of these individuals. The proposal would eliminate criminal penalties for possession of so-called personal use amounts of controlled substances and direct the Washington State Health Care Authority to craft a plan under which continual, rapid, and widespread access to a comprehensive continuum of care must be provided to all persons with substance use disorder. Voters next door in Oregon passed similar policy changes in November. That law took effect this past week. Sponsors of the Washington bill, as well as advocates at Treatment First Washington, the group behind the proposal, discussed the proposal at a press conference yesterday. Recovery is predicted on hope, Davis said at the event. People recover not when we cast them out, but when we bring them in. Possession limits under the proposal, dubbed Pathways to Recovery Act, are not yet specified. They would be determined by September 22 in the HCA work group. So basically, framework of a bill passed and then going to be worked on. The specifics, the regulations of the bill in later this next year. The specifics must include people who currently use controlled substances as well as individuals in recovery. Law enforcement, prosecutors, public defenders would also be represented in the panel. Mistake for law enforcement. Ultimately, law enforcement, the way we sit with things, they will be, if as things are, and they continue as things are, law enforcement will be removed from these work groups. It's already happening. Here in Denver, law enforcement was removed from the Denver Police Oversight Panel. It is only made up of the public now. And that same thing happening in multiple other places. We've talked about it before. Really, it'd be one thing if law enforcement had anything to bring to the table, but we already know what they're going to bring. There's no need to have a representative there. There's no need, because what they've said and their policies are already written down in stone. They've already been presented multiple times. In every single instance like this, whether it has to do with cannabis reform or any other sentencing reform or anything to do with drugs, they've been there and said the same thing from the very beginning. Nothing different. Not changed their tone. They've not contributed to the discussion in any positive way. And I wish they would. I really do. I wish they would. I wish that law enforcement officers that had the ability to give their experiences and talk about cannabis and other drugs openly and not have this policy of anti-drug across the board. You know, they're not allowed in these hearings to say, oh, I think that this would be a good idea. I think legalization is a good idea. You know, it's not something that these representatives that are put on these panels are allowed to say. It's just against policy. But if they were able to come to the table and give their legitimate, true stories, it would help contribute to these recovery issues. And it would help contribute to getting the bigger picture for people that are on the outside looking in that don't really understand this stuff, you know, and are looking for guidance for these things. You know, that's one of the people that have the frontline experience for all the things that we're talking about here. I get their concern. I get the care. I get why it is. I get it. But because they don't come correct, they don't sit down with progressive, meaningful conversation on their mind. Conversation has to be eliminated with them. You just cannot allow that voice to come in, and as big as it is and as powerful as it is, we can't allow that to come in and influence progress. We've already done the things that they have said. We've already kept it tight. We've already had the drug war. It's failed. It's time to move on to something different and listen to a different conversation. You can't have that conversation, so you cannot be at the table. I don't think that that's rude. I don't think that's ridiculous. I just think it's reality. Together, these folks, prosecutors, law enforcement, public defenders, going to design a plan to deliver increased pre-treatment outreach so those who want to find a path to healing can get help finding it. A plan to help these folks with science-proven and science-based approaches to treatment and recovery support services throughout that process is what they're aiming for. While existing laws against drug possession would remain on the books, they would no longer apply to people who possess less than a personal amount of the drug, defined by the bill as an amount consistent with personal, non-prescribed use patterns of people with substance use disorder. Individuals with prior convictions or activity decriminalized under the bill would also be able to petition the court to vacate the conviction. That's what we're talking about right here. This is what we are talking about, baby. Going back and re-looking at things that have happened, quote unquote crimes that have happened, and reevaluating them through a different set of eyes, through a civilly right set of eyes, something that does not violate the rights of a human being, and recategorize that. It's okay that we could do that. And in fact, it's imperative that we do that and go back and make these things right and correct it. For example, of future generations, to not relive history. Plus, it's just the right thing to do. Measure would apply to all controlled substances as well as counterfeit substances and prescription pharmaceuticals. Large-scale manufacture of controlled substances as well as possession with the intent to sell would remain illegal under the proposal. So this includes almost everything. So unless you have, I wouldn't qualify in this. So it could go a little bit further, but wait, it would qualify. Possession of 8 ounces or more. I wonder how they would define that if it were to be judged in this new law. If that would be allowed or be able to be argued. But at least we're moving in the right direction. That's a positive thing. Every state, some sort of this. Every state needs to get on board with that. California's got it going on right now. And I think there's maybe a state on the East Coast that has this going on. California's the only one right now from what I know on the top of my head. The measure would apply to all controlled substances as well as counterfeit substances and prescription pharmaceuticals. Large-scale manufacture, blah, 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 blah. We've already got that. Read that. It's time for smart, just, and effective drug policy in Washington State. Senator Joe Nguyen said, "We need to approach to health and safety, one that will begin to right the wrongs of the past for communities in rural and urban areas across the state. Clearly, what we're doing now isn't working." Allison Holcomb. Hey, I know that. I think I know this person. Political director at ACLU in Washington and an author of the state's 2012 marijuana legislation initiative told Marijuana Movement the decriminalization measure continues the organization's overarching goal to demonstrate that it's possible to replace punitive response to drug use with a public health approach and achieve better outcomes for communities. One noteworthy change from past versions of the proposal is that House Bill 1499 appears not to tap into state cannabis tax revenue in order to fund expanded treatment services, as organizers previously indicated the bill might do. I mean, either way, it's going to tap into the bill. It won't it should just directly take. You know what this might be for, and a good thing in this, because if they were to tap into the state's cannabis tax revenue, if it were directly associated with that and written into the bill, they would probably have to give a number for that to be, instead of just coming from the general fund, and that number may be wildly wrong or incorrect. So then at a later date, they might be able to come and ask the general fund for the exact amount of money that they need when this bill passes. That's why they're not tied to a certain number. The amount of money that's coming into cannabis tax revenue into the state's coffers, I mean, it's coming out of cannabis taxes either way. It's a brand new program. Every brand new program in the state is coming out of tax revenue from cannabis in every state. That's the way it works. New York lawmakers had some choice words for the governor's marijuana legalization proposal on Thursday, describing it as watered down and all wrong because they feel it inadequately addresses social equity and instead values revenue generation over justice. During a press conference, Senate and Assembly members and reform advocates took Governor Andrew Cuomo to task over the legalization plan he outlined on his budget request last month. Legislative leaders said the proposal shows the governor isn't serious about enacting the policy change and called for passage of the bill out of the legislature instead. My position has been and still is that Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act should be passed on the floor of the legislature, Majority Leader Crystal People-Stokes said. referring to a separate plan filed by lawmakers. We've seen the governor's proposal for the third time. Okay, now let us put our proposal out there, get it passed by the legislature, and then we'll begin to negotiate with the governor. This is the third year in a row that Cuomo has included a legalization proposal in his budget plan. Every time it's been a flip-flop farkin' mess. Last 2 times, negotiations with the legislature stalled amid disagreements over certain components such as the tax structure and market and funding social equity programs. Clearly, his tax proposals are all wrong. Clearly, social equity proposals are wrong. People Stokes said of the governor's latest attempts. There are a number of things that need to be fixed. If they're not fixed, then we'll be here next year trying to do the same thing. The majority leader, who made similar comments about the path forward for legalization last week, added that advocates and lawmakers need to probably start pounding a little harder, not just on the governor, but on people across the state to advance reform. I agree. Then again, I mean, what more can the people of New York do? Like, I think they've been doing this. Like, they need to step what they've been doing up. I mean, it's been Cuomo who's failed. And then the state legislature's failure to take over everything and get something done. Cuomo, although the problem is the state legislature gets something done and Cuomo will veto it. And the state legislature doesn't think that Cuomo's is suitable enough, so that shiz don't get done. Once again, we have a situation where we got somebody at the top, Cuomo, New York, that's just stopping everything from happening in a positive way. And that's frustrating. Like a fuzzy sticking in my nose. To be sure, Cuomo did put forward a plan to use part of the marijuana tax revenue to fund equity grants, and his proposals also call for automatic expungement of prior low-level cannabis convictions. But advocates felt his proposal was too focused on filling budget gaps rather than righting the wrongs of prohibition. I agree with many of my colleagues here. We need to flex on the governor. We got a supermajority. We got the Senate. We got the Assembly. Let's bring it to the floor to show him that this is what we want for the people of New York. This is what our constituents need right now, not watered-down approach. At this point, the world has progressed on, and Cuomo's budget language is now, as I would say, a key obstacle to getting good, fair, progressive legislation done on marijuana. Senator Jeremy Cooney said that the governor's proposal has actually gone backwards. We're not going in the right direction, as the majority leader noted before. 3 times is not the charm, he said, adding that a plan actually preserved criminality for several offenses related to marijuana. The plan. Among the issues that activists have identified in Cuomo's plan is a provision that would increase penalties for selling cannabis to people under 21, making it a felony instead of a misdemeanor. Talked about that before here on JDR earlier this week. Beyond the underage criminalization component, advocates have also outstanding concerns that Cuomo's plan omits home cultivation options for medical patients or recreational consumers. In contrast, People Stokes' bill would provide for home grow. Lawmakers' press conference on Thursday comes as advocates are holding a virtual lobby day to build support for justice-focused cannabis legislation. God dang. Separately, several other bills that focus on medical marijuana were recently pre-filed in New York, and they touch on a wide range of topics from tenant rights to medical cannabis patients, healthcare coverage for marijuana products. So, again, not close in New York. Frustrating. I mean, at this point, a few states might just want to wait for federal legislation to roll out and then form your state legislation around federal legislation. No, let's not do that, because it's possible that we might not see that go into effect for a couple years, just like what Virginia's trying to do. There may be a delay on that, which is what Washington and Oregon basically did, and it almost killed their system being unrolled. So that gap, that's a big problem. There's too much that can go in that gap and too much arguments from the other side that can be put in and disrupt everything. And then the delay that goes in for that. The arguments of how to get it done are so long, and then the licensing system on top of that. There's 2 ketchups. Not the kind you don't put on hot dogs. That are in place that could be a problem. The longer those are apart from each other, the more shit that can fall in that. Be like Arizona, okay? Be like Arizona. You passed it November, and then took a couple months to hammer it out, and then bam, it's good to go. All right, federal. The last one we get to for today. Thank you if you're hanging out with us here on the JDR. Make sure you give us that follow right above. And also, if you'd like to join our Discord, the Discord is below. You can hit that link. Big thanks to Get Seeds right here, the sponsor right now of the JDR show. I love all these awesome toys we got. Light, camera, action. And big thanks to you, the people that just chill here and listen to me. You guys are awesome. Got us to the affiliate. Moving on up to that partner spot. The other thing is I got to remember about the commercial part. That's where the commercial thing didn't work. I'll have to reprogram the button. Anyway, President Joe Biden's talking another positive step towards legalization on a federal level here. President Joe Biden, every day this week we've had something positive. Something brand new to talk about on a federal level in progress. President Joe Biden's nominee to head the U.S. Small Business Association committed during a Senate hearing Wednesday to examine marijuana businesses' inability to receive aid that is available to companies in other industries, although she didn't make any promises to solve the problem. We do have legal state cannabis businesses, says Jackie Rosen, told the nominee Isabel Guzman near the end of a 2-hour meeting, Senate Committee on Small Business and Entrepreneurship. We will work with our office to commit to consider providing legally operating cannabis businesses equal access to SBA resources, loans, counseling, mentoring, and training. Why is there a question mark on that? So on this, I would say that this being separate from what is happening on legalization side, but at the same time not being separate, there may be some people that are getting into office that would like to see the road towards these programs being implemented and monies being unlocked be a little bit more clear, have a little bit more clarification federally on what is allowed and what is not allowed. And we are coming up on that with everything that we've talked about on the federal legalization level. And even with decrim, there could be that possibility of bills being introduced and allowing state rights and access that the state rights have created, their systems, being recognized on a federal level that way. Looking less and less that we see that, and more that we'll see an all-inclusive system that includes taxes, regulation, and then things like this, loans, grants, etc. Be cool if we could eventually get a federal grant for training and education. The Charlie Stash entertainment education system. Can you imagine? Could be someday. As in typical Senate confirmations, the nominee's response was rather opaque, but she did commit to study cannabis issues and work with senators on possible solutions. I commit to further understanding those rules and regulations and seeing now how, covering the H there, we can partner with your office to serve in small businesses who are in need. Cannabis businesses and industry groups have complained about being excluded from federal small business programs open virtually to all other industries, but the COVID-19 pandemic and ensuing economic slowdown, as well as last summer's wildfires, have brought new attention to the disparity. Even if, say, as I mentioned, we had $2 billion plus in sales last year for cannabis. Even with that, there are other hurdles in paying taxes that are overly burdensome for state dispensaries. For dispensaries in states that have legalized, not being able to take out, things that normal businesses do. What are those called? Not being able to deductions that a normal business does. You cannot do that on the federal level. Colorado, other states, we've developed systems to be able to do this. But on a federal level, it is part of the RICO Act bill, Organized Crime Act, etc., whatever you want to call it, that you, even if you're doing something illegal, you still have to state your taxes made from this illegal business. And then the feds could come after you with that. Yeah. It's silly. It's crazy. But you have to do it. And in this federal sense of cannabis legalization, you not doing this puts you at a far greater risk than actually doing it. So you would think, okay, I'm just giving them carte blanche to come in and slam me, literally giving them the books to come in and do what they do. They've been pretty cool up until this point of not doing that. And in situations to where businesses have maybe not given them over the money and not giving them over that, let's say in California, specifically in California, it hasn't turned out too well for companies that have tried to maybe not do that for whatever reason. So you cannot take the deductions out with that. So you basically paying an extremely high tax rate to the feds for your business. And luckily, you know, we had the $2 billion in sales going on last year, and we can sort of afford to take on this responsibility at this point, even if it is an unjust one and should be changed. It's unfair that these businesses have to do this, but this is what we are in right now in the progress stage, all right? It's how shit works. So getting this changed is a big thing, and that's kind of what they're talking about here. And a lot of these small business association things will go into play easier, plug and play, once we get things figured out on a federal level. Very important. Without that, without having something comprehensive on the federal level passed, you know, we'll see things like the Cole memo that was passed during the Obama years that basically gave a wink allowance for stuff to happen, and then a slow rollout of bills that have barely any teeth with them. Let's not do that anymore. Let's get something done that is broad, that is an umbrella, covers everything. And then hemp, that's a whole nother story.
We'll talk about that next week with Adam Dunn, the hemp stuff.
He's pretty plugged in with that hemp thing. All right, I think that's going to do it for today on the JDR. Man, holy shit, 2 hours and 45 minutes. I thought we were at like an hour 45. Wow. We went on for a grip. What? How? 2 hours and 45? Really? Man, that's crazy. Wasn't even like there was a shit ton of news today. Did I say anything worthwhile today in 3 hours? 2 hours and 45 minutes? Maybe, maybe not. Either way, hope you did get educated. Is there anything last minute? It's Friday, so there's really not a lot of news, I don't think, popping off. Yeah, we're pretty much covered everything. We do have this. Schumer hosts first marijuana meeting to formulate 2021 federal legalization plan. We'll get to that. U.S. Senate leaders held a meeting with marijuana stakeholders Friday. Talk about that on Monday. All right. You guys have a fantastic day wherever it is your day is happening. I appreciate y'all. Thank you for joining us here on the JDR. Tell your friends about us. We also have the shows here on Twitch for, I think, 2 weeks. They're here, available. You can check that out, or YouTube. You can go over to our YouTube page, click play, and listen to them that way, and they'll be on there forever. Okay? Big thanks to Get Seeds right here, our sponsor here on the JDR. Big thanks to you, the listeners. Without you, wouldn't be possible. Without you, I'd just be talking to myself, which gets kind of lame sometimes. It makes me sad. Very sad. All right, I'm John Doe. You're awesome. See ya.
listening to the John Doe Radio Show live.